Welcome to the program. I'm Andrew Wilkow. Social engineering is back in fashion in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's not enough for progressives to spend 50 years and almost $20 trillion in inflated adjusted dollars on the war on poverty. And since the redistribution of wealth has failed to produce the desired results, the next idea taking shape in Washington is to redistribute people. You heard me right. Instead of taking money from the wealthier suburbs and giving it to cities to help the poor, they want to take the poor people out of the cities and place them in the suburbs. Now, let me just veer off here for a second, okay? If you're looking for some kind of code talk, like, sounds like I'm trying to scare the people in the lily white burbs that black people are moving in, before you critics out there ask, Andrew, why don't people like you want black neighbors? Okay, let me tell you something here. I don't care who lives next door to me. Whoever could afford the house next door at the market price is free to live there. That's America. Just as we're also free to not want to live with the urban destruction caused by progressive city machine politics. Social activists think that by forcing county and municipal governments to allocate land and resources to construct new, affordable housing, the people who will move in will automatically just inherit some better quality of life. Well, it's not a geographical problem. Instead, they should realize it's a political and cultural problem. And by cultural, I mean that it plays right into the dependency mentality that progressives enable. If the type of people who have made a complete mess of the city get the power through the federal government to force policy on other communities, then move the people who have been culturally indoctrinated to rely on the government to meet their needs, then location makes no difference. And while I'm at the criticism, contrary to the liberal myths, the suburbs are not exclusively white, and the cities are not exclusively made up of people of color. It's not 1954 anymore, people. While we're at that too, want to bet that there isn't a plan to move low-income rural whites to affordable housing units in the cities, to get better schools and access to hospitals and public transportation, get them out of that country life? The bottom line here is the Democrats want to move their voters to center-right areas. Democrats win urban districts by leaps and bounds. It only takes 51% to win. But that relocation of voters will dramatically change the political landscape outside the cities. There's also something funny here. The very same people who politically support this forced housing construction plan are also the very same people who have fought urban sprawl on environmental grounds. So, all of a sudden, developing the land is a good idea when before developing the land was damaging to the environment. This effort will also give new life to the plan to force states and counties to build more public transportation. And more public transportation isn't the only end goal. The progressives and the HUD director, Sean Donovan, say that poor people living in the cities deserve a better future and a better zip code.
Just yesterday, I was visiting a neighborhood called Yesler Terrace here in Seattle. And like so many neighborhoods of concentrated poverty in this country that are disproportionately minority, unfortunately, we see kids who, no matter how hard they work, no matter what their parents do to help them get ahead, their single most important determinant of their life chances isn't their potential, it's their zip code. And that's just simply wrong. We have to make sure that there are these ladders to opportunity in every neighborhood across the country. And so that's something that HUD does a lot of work on. When a family is doing their part, that they have a chance to get ahead. It's as simple as that.
That sounds exactly like Obama. Must have been the same speechwriter. Tell me about your plan for Appalachia while you're at it. Going to move those people too? So now all of us law-abiding taxpayers out there owe it to these people to give them a nice, comfy place to live. That's exactly why HUD intends to jam its suburb integration policy down all of our throats. This isn't going to work out, and it's not just my opinion. It's a fact, and the numbers do not lie. A HUD report, HUD report admits that its so-called suburb integration plan failed the last time they tried it. The 15-year-old initiative known as Moving to Opportunity for Fair Housing Demonstration Program, don't pass out from that long title, it's aimed at boosting employment and education prospects for the inner city poor by giving them access to better housing, schools, and jobs. It almost sounds like one of those promise zones the president's always talking about. The results of how unsuccessful this program was didn't come from some polling company or blog. Oh no. It was HUD's own Office of Policy Development and Research. They did the report on the program's outcome, and the long-term results were not at all what they had hoped to find. According to their own report, the adults did not take advantage of better job opportunities. In fact, they saw a negative impact on earning. These people didn't find better jobs overall and continued to rely on welfare. Just because you uproot somebody from one place and move them to another doesn't mean that particular individual have a higher earning power, which is exactly what the study suggested. I know what you're thinking. Well, it might not have helped the parents very much, but of course it gave their children a better opportunity, right? I mean, after all, that's what HUD Secretary Sean Donovan is suggesting they need. Well, the results for the children were just as bad. Despite going to better schools in the burbs, the children generally earned the same grades on the state tests in math and reading. They were still held back at the same rate as their peers in the inner city schools. So, to sum things up, essentially the report suggests that the higher rates, and I'm quoting here, of dropout, unemployment, and low earnings found in disadvantaged urban neighborhoods may rest with barriers that cannot be captured by neighborhood demographics, unquote. So the agency that implemented this plan studied the results and determined for certain it failed, naturally wants to try to force the exact same program again, thinking somehow this time it's going to work. What is that? Doing the same thing, expecting a different result? The definition of insanity. Each time the government tries to force some program like this, like some diversity program, it doesn't help anyone. Specifically, the lower income people the program was designed to help. It just creates more dependency. And because now, rather than the federal government subsidizing these families' needs, the burden gets shifted to the state and local officials. The local taxpayer ends up supporting the government assistance programs. With more people moving into these neighborhoods who aren't paying property taxes, there will be a need for more teachers, more infrastructure, parks and recreation, public safety, police and fire, all at the cost of the existing taxpayers in these neighborhoods. In New Jersey, there was the Coalition of Affordable Housing Law, and there were coalitions of people fighting for and against this HUD-style initiative. And in New York's Westchester County, which is about 45 minutes north of here, they've been battling with HUD for years. Now the federal agency is threatening to sue the county if it doesn't comply with the suburb integration program. We're actually going to talk to the county executive later in the show. But it's important for you at home to understand this terminology because it won't be the last time you hear the words suburb integration. Obama plans to sell this government-provided right to an opportunity hard during next week's State of the Union address. Take a listen.
At the end of the month, in my State of the Union address, I'll mobilize the country around the national mission of making sure our economy offers everyone who works hard a fair shot at opportunity and success. As Americans, that's what we should expect. And after everything you've done to recover and rebuild from the crisis this past 5 years, after all your hard work and sacrifice, that's what you deserve.
Who is he talking about here? Look, I don't deny the fact that there are zip codes with concentrated poverty, and I don't even deny that the majority of those people might be people of color. But we should look at why these environments exist. What is it about these city governments and the people who run these cities that causes these problems? Why do we have this generation? this generational poverty in the cities. Why is it? Study that before you start moving people around the place. All right, coming up, this radical plan to redistribute people from the inner city to the burbs isn't just a proposal for failure. It's actually happening in Westchester County, New York. We'll talk to the county executive next on Wilkow. Welcome back to Wilkow. Now, if you're just tuning in and missed tonight's monologue, I explained the Department of Housing and Urban Development's plan to economically integrate wealthy suburbs. The idea is to move what the department calls the urban poor into more affluent neighborhoods, hoping this will give them access to better jobs, better schools, and more opportunity. However, a 2011 study from HUD shows what it's been doing for 15 years hasn't worked out the way they thought it would. Shocker. A big government plan that didn't work out the way they thought it would. Anyway, this federal intrusion into the local housing market has caused major problems in communities across the country. In Westchester County, which is just north of New York City, the federal government has threatened to sue municipalities in the county for not changing zoning rules to help meet the department's affordable housing goals. Over the past few years, Westchester County has built 400 affordable housing units in wealthy neighborhoods, but the federal government wants 350 more at a total cost of $51 million. Right now, Westchester County officials are battling for control over their own local community as best they can. Joining me tonight in studio is the official leading the fight. Let's welcome on Rob Astorino, Westchester County Executive, and how are you, Andrew? Former executive over at SiriusXM Satellite Radio, where I worked during the day. All right, so this plan is to take a segment of the urban low-income population and move them into the suburbs, but they will not be property taxpayers when they arrive.
Well, this settlement with Westchester in particular goes back to my predecessor in 2009. County has to build, as you mentioned, 750 units of fair and affordable housing is the definition now that HUD uses. We have 7 years to do it, $51 million to spend. We're already well ahead of schedule. You mentioned we're at 400 of the 750. We cannot be fined because we are in compliance with this agreement. The problem now is HUD is getting very aggressive, using Westchester as the test case for the rest of the country, and they're changing the rules because they want us to do things that are not in the agreement, and I've said absolutely not. Basically, they want us to give up property rights, local zoning control for our communities.
That's what I don't understand. Aren't these the same type of people that fight urban sprawl and talk about green space and preserving the land and the environment, and they don't want all these people buying cars? So now they want the development that they fought years ago.
Well, here's the crazy part. So I'm down in Washington, D.C., in the Secretary of HUD's office. He takes out a map of Westchester County and says, you see that, all that green space in northeastern Westchester, why aren't you building there? And I said, you mean the watershed protected property, all of New York City's drinking water? You want us to build there where we're not permitted? How about you go down the block and talk to the EPA about that one? And so the problem is they don't understand local zoning, local control, New York State Constitution, which grants the right for land use decisions for our villages and towns and cities. And they're trying to force us to attack our own communities, to knock down their zoning, which HUD says is exclusionary.
But when he says building in that green space, I've been to Westchester County. In the southern part, you have more concentrated areas like White Plains,
Yonkers, big city.
But once you get up towards Lewisboro, Westchester County is odd. It goes right from pretty concentrated to pretty rural pretty quickly, and they're saying you should take that chunk of rural area and put the development there.
Yeah, which makes no sense. There's no sewers up there, the watershed protected property, there's no bus routes, all those kind of things.
Lots of animals,
and land is very expensive. No, it's right. The problem here is this. Westchester is the fourth most diverse county in all of New York State. We have 1 million people, 22% of our population are Hispanic, 15% African American. We have the 8th largest Jewish population in the world. We are not only diverse, but we have been building affordable housing on our own as permitted by the local zoning for decades and have won awards from HUD. Now they're saying not good enough. We want diversity in every community, every neighborhood. And so, if a quarter-acre lot, quarter-acre single-family zoning is in an area that is, for them, too white or too wealthy, etc., then that zoning de facto is segregated, and as such, you, the county, or we, the federal government, DOJ, need to come in and break it up. Now, it's ludicrous because zoning protects what can be built or what shouldn't be built. So if you're in a single-family neighborhood, you buy a house. Anyone can live there, but that's the zoning. You're going to live in a single-family residence.
What is the pace of residents moving in attracted to this affordable housing versus city services and hiring? If the county expands the population, you're going to need more police officers.
Correct.
You're going to need more public school teachers, more firefighters, parks and rec, roads, plowing. Who foots the bill for the increase of the population and the added city service employees?
Well, first of all, in order to build some of this housing, there's a lot of subsidies required by the taxpayers. That's number one. Number two, generally they're not going to be fully taxable, so there's going to be
rateable, right? That's the word,
right?
rateable.
So there'll be more areas that are going to be paying for that. What is worse about this, in this particular settlement, we are age restricted, by the way. You can't have more than 25% of the total 750 can be for senior citizens. I thought we had age discrimination issues, but apparently not anymore if it doesn't suit HUD. We also, spending our own tax dollars in Westchester, we have to advertise this beyond Westchester County to those that are, quote, least likely to apply. So minorities in New York City or New Jersey have to compete in a lottery against our own residents, built by our own tax dollars for this housing, which I think is crazy, but we have to do it because it's in the settlement. But what I object to the most is what HUD is pushing around the country right now. It did not get to the Supreme Court yet. I hope it does. It's called this disparate impact. And what it means is HUD, through statistics, so they'll say your town, for instance, for whatever reason, has an overwhelmingly white population. Therefore, based on their statistics, that town is segregated, de facto segregated, discriminatory, etc., and must be broken up. And thus the zoning laws are preventing...
I would be more okay with this if they were doing this in Chappaquiddick next to a family named the Clintons.
Chappaqua, yeah.
Chappaquiddick, different place. Or Katona next to maybe one of, Andrew Cuomo's girlfriend from the Food Network.
Kennedys.
The Kennedys.
Almost there.
Thanks for joining me on the program.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you in studio.